Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfuck Your Mind. I'm your host, Zach Lyotis. And in today's podcast, I have Dr. Cara Gubbins. She is a professional intuitive and coach whose passion is helping others live their dreams. She's the author of 3 best-selling books and the teachings from Animal Totems and Spirit Guide series of spiritual self-help books. Cara is the founder and host of the Animal Wisdom World Summit and the Animal Wisdom Circle. She has been a professional animal communicator for 8 years, offering intuitive readings for pets with physical, mental, emotional challenges, end-of-life decisions, and for animals who have passed on. She's also the creator of How to Talk to Your Pet, the proven 4-step system that teaches everyone how to talk to their pet or any animal. When she's not working on books and talking to animals, Cara can be found outside enjoying nature with her family. Thank you for being on the show, Cara.
I'm so happy to be here, Zach.
I'm so honored to have you here because when I read your description and what you do, I instantly had such a flicker in my heart when it came to animal communication. First and foremost, because a lot of people don't realize that, between their pet, I'm going to talk about a dog for just right now because I could just see a dog with a leash and the human holding the other side. But the people are not realizing that their energy is transmuted into the leash and into their dog. So I've had these conversations with people. So I was so excited when I saw that you were an animal communicator because it brought up so many emotions from my past and journeys that I've been through. So I want to get down to what brought you into that profession to begin with.
that was easy. I've loved animals for fucking ever. I mean, that's my thing. Animals are my thing. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be Dr. Dolittle when I grew up. That was my dream. And I was told that that was fake and that was made up and I couldn't do that. So I had to get a real job. And so it kind of squashed my dream. And I ended up becoming a scientist, and I got a master's degree and a PhD in biology just to be able to be around animals. And as soon as I finished my PhD, I was like, yeah, this isn't it. I can't do this. And so then it was like this really long period of figuring out like, well, if I don't want this that I've been working towards my whole life, what do I actually want? Yeah. And eventually it took about 6 or 8 years, I think, of literally wishing on a star every night when I was walking my dog and just saying, I want to be able to talk to animals. I want to be able to talk to animals till I found my path, which was getting a master's degree in spiritual psychology and undoing all of that crap, that I had put on myself, which is, I think, part of why I love the name of your podcast so much, because that's really what it's all about. It's unfucking your mind. Truly. It's all the stuff that we do that keeps us from being who we are. And so when you undo that, who you are just naturally shows up. And when I did that and I cleared all that crap, well, that's who I am. That's why I had that dream. And so then it just started showing up and I just started doing it. And it was amazing. And so I quit my job. I was teaching college biology and student success courses. And I started my own business. And I was like, my dream came true. This is what I'm up to. And so that was, now I'm not in my 9th year. I'm starting my 9th year in business.
Well, I have shivers all over my body as you're literally saying this. So I know you're in full alignment with where you're supposed to be. Because I'm just like, okay, guys, like chill out on these shivers. I know we have a love. I love animals. I love all sorts of animals. But what really brought you to want to communicate with the animal? Was it something like a journey you went through in the past?
I think that's, it's kind of funny you asked that because I think that's just kind of what's in my heart. Like what I always wanted was to understand what it was like to be somebody else. One of my I'm thinking of 2 pivotal experiences in my life. One was right after I finished my PhD and I was driving alone on Highway 1 in California out near Point Reyes. And there's this beautiful stretch of road where there's these horse pastures and there were horses out there. And before I knew what was happening, I was sobbing because I couldn't talk to them and find out what their life was like. What's it like to be a horse? And I had been studying dolphins for most of my life. And I was like, why am I getting so upset about horses? Like, I don't get this. And I had actually like so far pushed down that Dr. Dolittle dream that's when it came back. That's when it was like, I want to be able to talk to everybody. I want to understand what it's like to be you and be a messenger for you. And so that was when, that dream kind of came back to me as an adult. But I think, I'd spent so much time alone in the forest with my dogs growing up that we just had that natural rapport that I didn't even think about it. It wasn't animal communication. It was just like, we just did stuff, and we just kind of were on the same page. And then when I was in high school, I was a volunteer on a dolphin research project in the Bahamas. So I lived out on a boat. And one day I was swimming and this dolphin came right up. So all I could see was her eye. Like, that's how close she was. And we're swimming next to each other. And I looked into her eye and it was like, I saw her soul, and I knew we were soulmates, and I knew she could look into me and see that we're the same. We just come in different bodies.
Yes.
And so it's like, well, what's the difference then? Like, what's it like to be you? I know what it's like to be me, but I don't know what it's like to be you. And the best way for me to do that is to ask. And that's where the animal communication comes in. It's like, I just want to go and find out, like, who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing? To every animal I see. And so that's kind of, what I do now. That's really why I have the Animal Wisdom Circle, because I want to go talk to every kind of animal on the planet and see what's it like to be a butterfly. What's it like to be a snake? How is it different? How is it the same? And
it's so interesting that you say the snake, because I see a snake right now and I'm like, I wonder if she talks to snakes, because all of a sudden I'm seeing snakes. I'm like, and then you just said snakes. So I'm going to go on that, because snakes I'm looking at the energetic frequency of snakes. And yes, animals have a soul, and people don't realize this. They just think, oh, they're an animal, but they don't realize that they pick up on our vibrational frequency more than that we even pick up on theirs. But I want to go back to snakes, because people have this fear around snakes. And then that's when the snake, I find, will come attacking you, because it has that fear against you, not knowing what's going to happen. What is your take on a snake? Like, just communicating with them, or if you haven't communicated with them?
I love snakes. And I think every animal species has the whole range of personalities, because I've met snakes that are really like solid and serious and, thoughtful. And I've met snakes that were kind of lighthearted and curious and, kind of more independent and, unconcerned. So I think that there's everything there, but I mean, there's so many species of snakes.
Yeah.
I think to me, it kind of all comes down to our souls incarnate into the body that will give us the lesson we're here to learn.
Yes. And totally. I always say your animal is a representation of who you truly are. So I know, like, I'm going to talk about a dog, because as I was saying to you before the podcast, is that when I leave my house door open, and usually in the summertime, I'll leave it open, people's dogs run into my house all the time. And everyone's like, they'll say, Lily, because that's one of the dogs used to come in here. And I'm like, oh, is it a white kind of a poodle kind of a dog, like a baby? Because I don't know all the names of dogs. I have no idea, right? Yeah. And I'm like, she's in my house. She's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I said, well, your dog's really intuitive just to show up in my house like that and having a hoot in here. And that's what people don't realize, because I've noticed that there's other people that have their dogs on leashes, and their dogs could become so vicious or so resistant to certain things. And then I kind of will sit with it, and I've said to some people, your leash is just between you and your dog. You're communicating with your dog at every level. Can you bring that to light for some people? Because some people may not understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying that.
Well, it's a perfect metaphor, right? Like, that leash is the connector, right? So if you're pulling hard on a leash, the dog feels that and responds. If you're just kind of letting the leash fall, the dog feels that and responds. But if you're pulling tight, you're probably tense, fearful, worried, aggressive in some way inside yourself. You're trying to control something that you know you can't.
Exactly.
We won't go into that. But if the dog feels the leash being relaxed, loose, you know, flexible, open, it's also reflecting where you're coming from. But imagine that you're in two bubbles, and each one's like a balloon with a string, but now instead of a string going down, the string is connecting you. So that leash is kind of that connector of the two bubbles of your energy fields. Whenever we interact with anybody, our energy fields interact. So those two bubbles now are overlapping. Whether that leash is there or not, whether that little string from the balloon is there or not, our energy fields are always interacting with anybody that we're interacting with. You and I, however thousands of hundreds of miles away we are from each other, energetically, our energy fields are interacting.
For sure.
So if you're in that space of understanding that everything happens on every level, whatever we're doing physically, we're also doing mentally, we're also doing emotionally, we're also doing energetically, then that whole metaphor, you know, takes it to the next level, right? There's always information. We're always communicating, whether we're aware of it or not, whether it's with our dogs or with each other or, you know, with our guides or whoever. Yes. There's intelligence and information in energy, and our energy is always communicating. So we're always communicating with everybody.
It's so true, because I was in Mexico. I'm going to tell you 2 stories in Mexico that happened to me, because that's when I realized I was able to communicate with animals. I knew I had this little gift with animals, and I always thought it was just with dogs. But I'll tell you my horse story in a second. But I want to talk about my dog, Sammy, that I had down there. She was a rescue dog. She was brutally beaten. She was used as just the baby-making dog. She literally had so much suffering inside of her. And when I was down there, I wanted a dog. I wanted to foster a dog for the time I was down there. And the lady that I was speaking with, she says, do you want Sammy? She's a pit bull. She's partially blind. She has cataracts in one eye. Do you want to take her with you for the month that you're here? And I was like, yeah, I want her. So here comes Sammy. You know, she has no idea who I am. And I just kept on saying, you're just so beautiful. Over and over and over. Like, you're just so beautiful. You're a pit bull. Everyone's afraid of you. But you look at you. You're just like so calm. Like, you're a diva. You know when to be heard. You know when not to like jump on people, because she never barked. And everyone would ask me, does your dog bark? And I was just like, you know what? Thinking about it, I never heard her bark. Until one day, someone came up really close to the house. It was a masculine energy. And all of a sudden I heard her going at it. And I was like, I looked at him like, you bark? Like, it was such a shock, but she just felt she never needed to bark. There was no need for her to bark. So this went on for a while, obviously. And then even when it came to me putting her eye drops in her eyes, like, we would just make a game out of it and have fun with it. By the time I left Mexico, I was bawling. She was bawling. We're both bawling. Her cataracts got better. She became such a strong horse. It feels like we both came into each other's life at the most perfect time. It's like we both needed love. We both needed some sort of love from somewhere, but we got it from each other more than anything. And I still to this day think about this dog. And I tapped into her energy. And I remember after I got back from Mexico, it was like I tapped into her energy, and she says, you neglected me like everyone else did. I bawled my eyes out, and I had a conversation with her, and I said, if I could bring you home, I would, trust me, but they won't let me take you home with me. So for 3-4 days, I was just assuring her that I never neglected her. I just didn't have the power to take her with me. And it still sits with me. I look at pictures of her and I just smile. So even with distance, I want to ask you this question, because this was one of the things that I felt. Even with distance, you can still communicate with your animal from what I'm receiving, because I had to go through that. Could you explain how that works for those that are listening?
I wish I could explain it.
Yeah. I know there's no explanation in the metaphysical world. I get it. But I always think to myself, you're going a little bit on the loony bin. Like, it's not her energy. It's not this, it's not that. But
no, but it is. And that's, I don't know, like, what would we call it? Like the new physics or whatever. Like, everything is energy. There's no such thing as matter being different, right? Like, matter is a form of energy. We're energy, you're energy, she's energy. Energy has no limitations in time and space. So of course energy can connect. And that's what we do.
Yes. So I'm gonna stay on the subject of dogs before I get to horses. So how do you help people through a grieving process that their animal has now passed away? Or how could we make the process much easier for people? Because I know Sammy didn't pass. I left her and it was hard. I cried, and then I realized how hard it was to have a dog. I would never do that to myself again. But how is it that you help those that have animals that have crossed to the other side?
So, sorry, I've got leaf blowers outside of me. My neighbors have their things, so I've got some noise. I hope it's not coming through. So the thing that I think helps people the most is having that connection. Knowing that that connection is still there, that being that they love so much is still a being, even if it's not in physical form. There's something incredibly powerful in, I feel like I'm the channel between them and their pet angel, that gives them that visceral experience that being is still intact in some way.
Yes.
And so that's one way that I can help people. The other way is that the other way that I can help people is that a lot of people beat themselves up and they cause themselves unnecessary suffering around whatever it was, the judgments they make against themselves around the animal passing, around what they did or didn't do at that time. Like, we carry so much suffering with us that's our own doing. And so by having that conversation with that being that they love so much, and every single time that spirit of that animal that has passed is fine. And just knowing in your heart of hearts that being that you love is okay, it has this amazing healing effect. So by facilitating those conversations and bringing forward, is she mad at me because I didn't help her, or I didn't know what to do or whatever, like we beat ourselves up. And the dog can say, the spirit of the dog can say, no, that was fine. That was exactly how I planned it. Or there was nothing you could have done. So why are you making yourself wrong for what happened? Because it was out of your control. So those kinds of conversations are super, super healing. And to put that spiritual context into our relationships, I think, is also in itself healing. Really understanding that we're together for reasons that are usually beyond our understanding, that there's always more to the picture, that there's a divine framework that we're being held by. I'm thinking of one client whose cat had died like 6 years before she came in to see me, and she was miserable. I mean, she just carried this grief, and she was like gray and she looked so drawn and worn and, colorless when she came in. And when she left a half an hour later, she was standing up. She was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Her coloring was back. Everything was good because she felt so guilty because her cat had passed while she went out to the laundromat, and she got home. And the cat said, I had to die. I had to make my transition when you were gone, because if you had been here, it would have been too hard on you.
Yeah.
And she got it. She's like, yeah, that's probably true. That would have been too much for me. Yes. So the cat had a plan, and she got to understand that, and she got to let go of all that internal dialogue that was beating her up for all these years. So the thing that I've learned about grieving is it's a physical process.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go through it. We're physical beings. We're going to grieve. So just know that that's the terrain. It is a process. You will go through it. And our beloveds, whether they're human or animal, who have passed, they're not grieving anymore. They're just in this place of love where they just have unconditional compassion and love for us. And everything is okay. So they're not suffering. And I think that's an important thing that people don't really get. They think because I'm sad and I miss you so much that wherever you are, you're sad and suffering and miserable. And they're not. so you can let that one go.
Yeah, it's so true because I have a friend that she had, I think, 7 dogs, and one by one, they were all passing away. But every time one would pass away, I didn't know was passing away, I would see a new dog in my collection of spirit animals coming forward. And I call my friend, I'm like, is everything okay? Because I didn't want to ask her. So did another dog die this week, And as we're having this conversation, I see all the dogs that I bring with me everywhere. They're my spirit animal. And they're all here. And I remember there was times where she had me call my friend and say, could you tell her to stop crying? Like, I'm fine. And I'd call her and be like, are you crying a lot about, I can't remember what her dog's name was. Are you crying? She goes, yeah. And I said, well, you know what? She just wants you to stop. And she just cried even more. And I said, exactly what you're saying. It's like the guilt. People hold on to all this guilt and suffering. But at the end of the day, it's like, there's 2 options. Either you go through more suffering or understand that that animal is more intelligent than you actually probably even realize it.
Yeah. And I think, that kind of touches on like what I feel like is part of my mission in the world is like, these are independent beings, mm-hmm. which deserve our respect as much as we respect, whoever we respect the most. As much as we respect Gandhi, we should respect that owl. Yes. Like they are autonomous beings with their own intelligence, their own lives, their own way of seeing the world. They're here with their gifts and their lessons. And same as us, we're here to learn our lessons and share our gifts, and so are they. And to put us on equal footing and not make them higher and not make them lower, but just know that all these beings, every being on earth is the same. We're all the same.
I think everyone needs to go watch It's a Dog's Life. That was the best movie ever. And it's just, it brings me to that because I brought my niece to that. She wanted to see it. She's so connected to spirit. And she says to me, I didn't realize like this happens. And they're crying in this movie. My niece and her friend are just crying. I'm just like, are you guys okay? And they're like, but I thought it was like dead for good. And it just came back. It's like happy tears. It's true. Your dog will come back to you in another animal. Like you'll feel that same spirit. You'll feel like as if the animal that you're not replacing any dog. You're just adding more joy into your life in remembrance of your dog more than anything.
Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to for my kind of communication with animals. I am no expert. I have no idea what I do half the time when it comes to animals, but that's why I have you on here. So do you teach courses in this?
I do. Yeah. I have a 3-month class, 12 weeks called How to Talk to Your Pet. And I teach it twice a year, and everybody can do this, and there's easier ways to do it. So why not come and take a class and take the easy route, right?
Yeah, and I think everyone should do this because at the end of the day, your dog, your animal, whatever animal is like, I'm thinking my bird passed away. I was devastated when my bird passed away. Like every animal that comes into our life is really trying to tell us something about our own self.
Yeah. And, that's Danielle McKinnon, who's an animal communicator, who I've interviewed for one of my summits. She really talks about these soul lessons and that, everything that happens to us with our animals, it's because the animals is teaching us a soul lesson. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like what you're saying. And I think we do have all that we come in to each other's lives to learn about ourselves, to help each other. There's lots of ways I think we can do that. There's lots of different relationships that we can have. But I really think that we have these soul contracts with everybody whether they're big ones where they're going to live with us for 15 years or they're little ones and we're going to get some gift, you know, by hearing the birds sing in the trees on our walk, or, you know, whatever it is. I think that's the nature of incarnation on our planet.
Yes.
Right?
I believe so. I believe that animals are brought to us for a reason. I mean, I've seen owls in the middle of the day, and someone's like, there's no way you could see an owl in the middle of the day. I'm like, actually, I've seen 3 so far. You know, there's times early in the morning, all I hear is a symphony of birds at my front window. And I'm like, okay, universe, what are you trying to tell me? Right? Yeah. Cats will come into my life when I feel that I need to become more dependent and stop thinking that someone else is going to come into my life to help me out. It's almost like a bass saying, no, sweetheart, dependence here. Like, this is your independence, you know? Yeah. And it brings me back to Sammy, because Sammy taught me that all you need to do is be present. You don't always need to be heard. So with her bark, like she just said, you know, she would sit up, and she was a pit bull. People are terrified of pit bulls. And she didn't have to bark because they had this misconception of what a pit bull truly is. And I think pit bulls do have a misconception. They're friendly dogs. They're loving dogs. They're caring dogs. They might have a little bit of aggression in them. I felt her at one point. I was like, whoa, Sammy, slow down. You're tripping me out now. But it's really the person behind the dog that creates it to become such a beast, right? It's that mindset that they're bringing into their animal.
Absolutely.
So it taught me so much.
Yeah. And think about a pit bull too. I mean, their body is so powerful. I mean, those jaws, the biting power of those jaws is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so when you have this gentle soul in a powerful body, the combination is a very powerful presence.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, you don't have to say anything because your energy field is saying it already. Your physical presence, the way you look is also the message.
And it's so true, because I didn't have her on a leash, and everyone's like, put your dog on a leash. And I said, my dog doesn't need to be on a leash. And they said, well, you know, she's a pit bull. And I said, watch. And I call her name and she'd come right beside me. I said, it's not the dog. I said, it's the owner. And she knows who's in charge.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, I think, one misconception that everyone has when it comes to, you know, dogs and leashes. Like, when the owner is in charge, the dog knows who's boss in that sense. And that's
whether there's a leash there or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it a Great Dane, those big ones that look like horses?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. My friend had one of those, and she's like, do you want to hold the leash? And I was like, sure. Well, I let go of that leash because I would have been rebel. Like, this thing took off, and I was like, I can't hold this horse. I was going to say this because it's a beast. Like, those are huge. They have power in them, right? So yeah, it doesn't matter, leash or no leash, they know when they want to take off. What is your favorite? I know, I think I asked you this question already, but the dolphin keeps on showing up, and I hear, could you talk about the dolphin's intelligence?
Oh yeah, that was something that really kind of ignited my curiosity and imagination when I was a kid, when I first fell in love with dolphins, because that was, you know, in the 70s when intelligence was a big thing in the scientific world, and in the, you know, public world too. Like, people were really interested in that topic, and dolphins kept coming up with every test we made to kind of distinguish humans from animals in terms of our intelligence. Dolphins would match us or beat us on it. So I just love that whole thing, you know. And you know, because I studied dolphins for so long, I was so immersed in the science of it and the biology of it. But now that I've, you know, been really in I guess in study of all these different animals, because I've worked with so many different species now doing the intuitive work. But even back then, intelligence really is the ability to respond to your environment in a way. To learn, the ability to learn and respond in new and appropriate ways to whatever your environment throws out to you. And the octopus is such a great intelligent animal to have in the picture, because dolphins are really similar to us in terms of their brain, the way it physically is, the way they use it, the way that their social society is. You know, there are a lot of similarities to us. So of course we expect them to be similarly intelligent, just like the great apes. And so humans, dolphins, great apes are all very similarly intelligent, and we all have very similar biology and natural history and social structure, right? So now we think social intelligence has something to do with that. Well, then the octopus comes along, and the octopus now beats us at all of these intelligence tests as well. So here's this really foreign being, not only living in the water, but living in a completely different body, not a mammal, who now is, you know, tool use and problem solving and, you know, mazes and all these things that we use to measure intelligence. And the octopuses are kicking butt in the intelligence world. So where does intelligence come from? Because they don't have a brain like ours.
Yeah, I'm kind of flabbergasted as you're saying that. I want you to continue speaking about that, because when I look at an octopus, I'm almost kind of seeing the octopus just as a bottom feeder, just roaming around and just picking up things. So it's my ignorance, obviously, towards it.
That's kind of octopus land, though.
Yeah,
that's kind of what
so
they
it's
do.
interesting that you said it has a
You
high
can think of a dolphin like it's just swimming through the water, right? Yeah. Like that's just what they do.
Your environment.
But there's so much more going on, and I think, you know, scientifically, biologically, I don't think we understand yet where the octopus gets intelligence from. But in the way that I look at animals, you know, I really see each one as some are more adapted to their environment. And so they're more locked in. So think of an alligator. They haven't changed biologically in millions of years or whatever, however long it's been. Tens of thousands, I don't know. I can't remember all the right numbers anymore, but probably millions. So they're very locked in. They're not going to rank high on the intelligence because they're so dialed into their biological niche in the world. And they're so well adapted to it that not much changes. So intelligence to me is much more a measure of our ability to adapt to change and to learn from what our experience is. So it doesn't mean that, you know, one is better than the other. And from a biological, spiritual overlap point, the lessons that you can learn as an alligator are very deep, you know, about really being deep into your species and that species experience. And what is it like to be just so dialed into that and have that kind of focus in your world, versus a dolphin or an octopus or a gorilla, where your environment changes a lot. You have to respond to different things. You're biologically going to be different, and spiritually you're going to be different. You're going to be learning different things in your natural life and in your spiritual life. And that to me is a really fascinating area of looking at how does our spirit interact with our physical.
Yeah.
Right? And how does our natural history and our environment bring forward our gifts and our lessons that we're here to learn because we incarnated right here. And I remember talking to a butterfly who has just been reincarnating as a butterfly over and over because her soul wanted to learn the lesson of non-attachment. So she chose this species that has a very short lifespan. You change bodies right in the middle and, you know, you're gone in a year. And so she's just really working on that non-attachment thing. And by over and over facing those same challenges, whatever, you know, attachment or resistance to change or whatever her soul needs, she's there learning that lesson because that natural history and that biology gives her that opportunity. How did I get here from intelligence and dolphins? I don't know.
And know what the fine thing is? There's like a heap of birds just flying over my house right now, which is really interesting that we're having this discussion. It doesn't surprise me. But I'm just sitting here in awe because I believe animals are, you know, my parents always said to me, animals are more intelligent than human beings. They've always said that, you know, watch an animal, it could teach you a thing or two. And it's so interesting because I have visions of, you know, weird things happening to me sometimes. And last night I was in bed, I looked down, I thought there was a whole bunch of spiders on the ground. And I was just like, oh God. And then I heard, why do we scare people? We're so small. Like, you could step on us, but why do we scare people? And I'm like, I know, but you're tripping me up because if you come on, right? So what is it about the human mind that gets so, what's the word I'm looking for? That gets so intertwined with the fears of animals. Like, you know, because I'm looking at my spirit animal, it's a cheetah. It's a black panther as well. And I'm like, when I die and come back, I want to come back as a cheetah. Is that possible?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I say that from the place of, most of my spiritual understanding of how the world is set up, like what the spiritual structure of our world is from talking to people and animals who have passed and asking them. So I've had, you know, spirits of dogs who've come back as people's human babies. And I've had vice versa, you know, so I think that, again, my understanding is that the soul decides the lesson it wants to learn and then chooses the best physical incarnation for that lesson. So if you wanted to learn about whatever it is that cheetahs or panthers learn about, then of course you could go do that. Or, you know, who knows, I think our souls could also just choose, like, I want to feel that gift of speed. I want to feel that gift of power. What would it be like to experience that? So that may be, you know, a higher priority for your soul than whatever the lesson is. You might just want to really incarnate into a body and an experience of power and speed and grace.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it is all about the speed. Like, when I see them run, I'm just like, whoa, like, they go fast. But it's interesting that you say that humans could incarnate in animals, because I'm going to go back to Mexico here. Before I got to Mexico, it was a week prior to showing up in Mexico. There was a horse rescue ranch that I was at. And this is where, what was her name again? Did I say? Sundance. Sundance was born, and I wasn't there. She was born a week before I got there. And she was born with a defect of her urethra and stuff like that. So he couldn't urinate, sorry. So while I was starting to learn that I could communicate with horses, which took me by surprise, but I thought I could do this and I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn about this horse. She told me, yes, I'm going to live. I'm going to fight through this. I could do this, you know. The next day, as I told you pre-show, she passed away. She said, I can't do this anymore. And I asked, what made you come back? I don't even know why I asked that question. It was just a question that came to me. And I heard, I'm a man that wanted to see what a horse was like, but I wasn't fully developed. So it wasn't me. It wasn't my time to come into a horse at this time. And I thought to myself, okay, am I really hearing this? Because now I'm interpreting the message to the woman that carried this horse ranch. And I thought, okay, I know one flew off the cuckoo's nest, but now I sound even crazier. Right? She has a horse communicator. So she told the horse communicator this. I don't know what happened because I didn't get the message. But I was curious as to, you know, that's why I asked you, could humans reincarnate into animals?
But so, why not, right? A soul is a soul. A body is a body.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. So what is some of the greatest wisdom that you've learned from animals?
Oh my gosh. That's such a big kettle of fish right there.
Fishbowl, baby.
Well, you know, I've written 2 books that are personal memoirs, personal self-help books. So What the Owl Knows and What the Elephant Knows. And I think that and then the next one that I'm working on is What the Dog Knows. And this is, you know, kind of my journey of how do I incorporate wisdom from the animals into my life. So I'd have to say the ones that I decided to write books about are probably the most important, most impactful messages that I've gotten from the animals. My dog Aiko came to me when I was a graduate student and super independent. My graduate school was in Reno, Nevada, and I was living in Florida. My research was in South Carolina. I'm super happy as an independent human being. I'm, self-sufficient, competent, all this stuff. And to a fault, I would say, even, and through living with her, really learned how to be devoted to somebody else and put somebody else first, which I had never really had to do to that degree. I honestly didn't know if I was capable of really showing up for somebody in that way. And the last 2 years of her life, she developed arthritis, and so 2 years before she passed, we took our kids, my husband and I took our kids to Disney World in Florida, and we live in California. And we were gone for a week, and our neighbor came and took care of her, and she was pissed. My dog was pissed. She wouldn't leave our bedroom. She wouldn't go outside. She wouldn't look at the neighbor who was there to help. And, I got calls every day, like, I don't know what to do. So we got home, and she gave me the silent treatment for like 2 days, which she was 13 years old. She was 11 then. She had never done that. We'd been together every day of her life, and she had never done that before. She was really pissed. So I said, Aiko, whatever you need, I will never leave you alone again for the rest of your life. And so I completely rearranged my whole family, all of our vacations, to make sure that she could be with us until she passed, whenever that was. Ended up being 2 years later. And what I learned from that, and what she told me she was here to teach me, because before she died was right when I learned how to really communicate with animals. She said she was here to teach me devotion, and that I could do that. And she was the vehicle for it and the model for it, and gave me a whole new sense of who I am and who I can be in the world, and how I can show up for people. I call everybody people, animals and people, how I can show up for anybody to be that kind of devoted, because that's how devoted she was to me. So we didn't have a dog door for her whole life. And so with her arthritis, I had to wake up in the middle of the night and take her outside and hold her up to pee in Northern California. It's butt-ass cold out there. My pajamas.
Come to Canada, let's talk.
Yeah. So I think, those are the kinds of the animal wisdom that I've, drawn and integrated into my life. But in the animal wisdom circle, I do that every month. So I talk to, and the members of the circle, we talk to a different animal every month and go, how can I take your wisdom? Well, we just talked to a mouse last week. Oh. Nurturing, caring, taking care of people, letting go of our loved ones, letting our babies grow up and leave us. There's such wisdom there. And so this month we're really focusing on how do we incorporate that? How do we get to live that and express that in our lives? So that's why it's such a big kettle of fish, Zach. It's like, there's the big, year-long learning things. There's the casual interaction where I just get that download. And then there's this kind of concerted effort of like, I want to learn from animals, so I'm going to go out and talk to somebody every month and integrate it. There's so many ways
yes,
to get animal wisdom.
And it's so funny that you bring up the mouse, because I'm not a mouse fan. And like, straight up, I don't want you in my house. You're cute, but not in my house. You could stay in your environment. So it's funny that you brought it up, because I've heard, like, when I've seen mice, I've heard, I'm not that bad, I was just like, I don't care. I just don't want you in my house. Like, you don't belong in my house, right? So I totally get that you do learn a lot from animals in so many different ways. Wow, I could continue talking about this because I really want to just actually go out in a field with you and just talk to animals all day long, because that's just such a beautiful thing to be able to connect with animals. But I keep on hearing this right now, and this will be the last question because we're in due time right now to end the show. But one question, let me just, oh yeah. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and my friend wanted to go to the zoo. And when I got into the zoo, I felt pure anxiety. And I said to her, I'm not a fan of zoos. I will go in there, but I'm not a fan of zoos. Every animal told me to open up the cage. They want to be free. The only animal that was happy in the zoo was the giraffe.
Wow.
I said to her, I'm sorry. Here I am, like literally crying in the middle of a zoo. I said, I'm sorry, but I got to leave. These animals, yes, they're beautiful, and yes, people want to learn about them, but they do not belong caged up. They belong to be in their environment. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, because even here in Toronto, we have such a huge zoo, and people flock to the zoo all the time to see these animals, and I cannot go to the zoo. What is your intake on the whole zoo thing?
So, for a long time, I really saw animals in captivity as a necessary evil, because people will only protect what they know and what they love. And if they can't get close enough to love, the majority of people, if they can't get close enough to really get that connection with that animal and feel their presence, they're not going to love them. They're not going to care about the environment. I personally can't go to those places either. I will be open to it. To me, it's not an absolute, because I've had really awesome conversations with animals who are in captivity. But I really think we need to get out of that. Our planet is disintegrating in front of our eyes because of the imbalance. Yeah. And to me, zoos are, an outdated patriarchal system of our dominance over animals, that our pleasure is more important than your life. So there's so many ways that it's just so wrong to me. I firmly believe that animals should be wild and free, and that because of the technology that we have and the ability to travel and to have experiences with animals in the wild, and to bring those back, to have webcams and to have, other kinds of ways of interacting with nature and wildlife, that those zoos, aquariums, parks are absolutely not necessary. We don't need them. And the good side of them, there's a lot of zoos fund a lot of conservation. They do a lot of good work. Mm-hmm. And it's not to take away from that at all, but I think we really need to flip our paradigm on a way to do it with animals that are not capable of living on their own in the wild, and creating much more naturalistic environments for them to recreate as much as possible that autonomous way of being in the world. I feel like that I kind of went all over the place on that one, but
no, I totally felt you on that, because that's exactly what I feel like. If the animal doesn't need to be there, it shouldn't be there. But if there's an injured animal that needs some sort of help in gaining its strength back, or rehabilitation and becoming that primal fierce animal is supposed to be, then create this kingdom for them, rather than locking up these animals that really, I've never seen so many angry animals at the zoo like I have there. And it blew my mind, because I didn't know what to say. I just said to my girlfriend, I said, I want to open every cage right now. I have to get out of here. I don't belong here, I said to her. This is not me. But the bee just showed up. And now the bees right now are becoming, and there's so much bee wisdom coming through right now. What is one thing that you could give our audience before we go? I told you I could sit here and talk to you about animals all day, and I know we can't do this, but we can, because we could do whatever we want. But give us some bee wisdom, because they're slowly going, and people are just disrespecting our bees, and they don't realize how much we need them in order just to survive.
Yeah. So the bees, every time I've tuned into bees, it's like, it really feels like warm honey, you know, like the warmth and the good naturedness of bees. You know, really the wisdom of the bee is to be on purpose and have your purpose be an act of love.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about, you know, bees going extinct, and for whatever reason, I'm really, I'm hitting on the monarch butterflies maybe going extinct this year, like literally this year. They're that close. Another animal was just the panther, the eastern panther, or cougar, was taken off the endangered species list in the eastern United States because it's extinct. It's like each time we lose that animal, we not only lose an incredibly important part of our ecosystem, but we lose the incredible energy that is our spiritual nourishment as well. The whole tapestry of our natural world is supporting us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and energetically. And we can't keep having these things drop off. We're losing ourselves. Every time we lose a species, we lose a part of ourselves, because each one of us is like the hologram of everything, right? And if we lose one aspect of ourselves, then we're not the same whole and complete being that we were before. And the bee wisdom is really about finding your purpose and devoting yourself in loving service to whatever that is.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all the animals that made themselves present today. I feel like I could just, I'm telling you, because I feel like I'm an animal whisperer, but I don't know if I'm an animal whisperer, but they do come talk to me quite frequently.
If you think you're an animal whisperer, you are an animal whisperer.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I want to sit here and talk to you about birds and different species of birds and the owls. And I want to talk to you about like just wild, like lions and tigers. Like, I could continue going, because this is the animals that seem to always appear in front of me, and just like, go roar, go out there and stand in your power, go show your presence, be in who you are without allowing anyone else to attack you. Just stand in your presence. And that's what I think Sammy also taught me as well when I was in Mexico. And people don't realize that these animals are just a lot more than animals. Their love, their compassion, their caring. You might have this misconception that they're mean and cruel and they eat people. Well, that's their ecosystem. They're going to eat animal after animal after animal. But wow, and I could hear someone go, do you eat horse or do you eat, cow? It's just like, I stopped eating a lot of animal foods because of all that stuff. And it was a belief that we needed it, that was imprinted so deep in our soul, that to get off of it, it was like, yes, I get it. Like, I don't need to have the fish, even though sometimes, I think in my mind, no, I need it because I need to have the omegas. Well, go take a capsule, like go do something else, right? So just the wisdom of an animal is just so empowering. And I always, when I talk to animals, it's like, when you're slaughtering us, give us gratitude if you're going to slaughter us. Do it with grace. Do it with love. Don't do it out of anger and greed because you're going to make $1,000 off of us or $10,000 off of us. So this is what I learned from animals the whole time. It was like greed shows up 10 times more because they look at the animal. I'm going to say a cow because that's what's coming to me right now. It's like they look at the cow as we're going to make $5,000 off this cow. They don't give it that gratitude and thanking it for giving it all that milk that it gave it or that life that it gave it. And that's why that's the suffering part of the cow to me and it just keeps on coming. Like I could keep on going on talking about this whole animal thing because they have a soul. But we have to change that paradigm of how we look at animals. And so that's why I'm so grateful to have you on the show today. I'm so grateful to have this discussion and to see that If anyone needs to go out there and learn how to communicate with animals, please take Dr. Cara's course, even just to communicate with your own birds or fish or dogs or cats or monkeys, whatever animals you have out there. Learn to communicate with your animal, because at the end of the day, your animal is telling you something about you. Dr. Cara, thank you so much once again. I hope we could have a part 2 to this.
Let's do it.
Let's do a part 2. I feel like we didn't do justice too much, because there's so many animals that are coming to me that want to be heard.
Yeah.
So I would love to have you for a part 2.
Let's do a part 2 and give all those animals their voice.
Yes. Thank you so much once again. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show and just share your divine grace and who you truly are in this world with the animals.
Oh, thank you, Zach. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Catch us again next Wednesday. Also, if you want to get a hold of Dr. Cara, look at the show notes below. Please contact her, because you're going to make a world of difference in knowing why these animals are coming into your life. Catch you again. Have a great day. Bye for now.